So today's training session is really covering the first two steps of the sales process with the in-home process. When we actually get to the home, we're going to sit and we're going to do a presentation, and that is building rapport and setting the agenda. Can someone just give me a confirmation that they can see my screen okay?
Yep, we can see it.
Yep.
You're good.
Yep. Good. I just want to check in one more time before I got started because I was having some connectivity issues earlier this morning. All right, so let's dive into this, and let's start off with the first part of this, which is building rapport. And, the concept of building rapport is pretty evident. It's to initiate a conversation with the homeowner to get them comfortable with you. People are not going to be in the right frame of mind, the right environment if they're not comfortable with you, and they're not going to engage, they're not going to listen. All they're going to do is wonder, how long you're going to be in their house before you leave. So obviously that's an important thing that you're likable and that you build a level of comfort with them. And the goal here is to establish your credibility and to build trust and comfort while also determining how to make the consultation unique to them specifically. Every presentation, although there's a sales process, has to be adjusted to a customer's wants, needs, personality, all of those things. So what you're really trying to do, besides getting them to feel comfortable, is gauge, what type of personality, what type of customer am I dealing with, and adjusting, maybe the tone and the approach, to specifically be customized to them. And so on the next slide here, it talks a little bit about why it's important to build rapport. Again, a lot of these things are just common sense, but I also think it's important to stress them because what you don't want to do is you never want to glaze over or try to hurry through this particular step in the process, because if you don't get the customer to feel comfortable, everything that you're going to do after that is less effective because you haven't established that level of comfort. So you definitely want to set the tone. You want to make sure you have a relationship. When you talk about in-home sales, it's a relationship, an emotional sale. It's not so much a business transaction. People want to buy from people they like and trust. So establishing credibility is important, and again, the trust and comfort. What it also does, though, is it provides the basis for a unique customer solution. While the customer is talking, while you're building rapport, you're getting a lot of information from the customer about who they are, how they think, what their buying habits potentially are, which helps you start to look for customer drivers. And so building rapport really is done, for me personally, is by asking customers a lot of questions. It's about letting them talk about themselves, let them talk about their circumstances. So if you look at this last point here, it says customers buy from people they like and trust. Building rapport gives you the opportunity to put the customer at ease, begin building a relationship and establishing your credibility by asking a series of non-threatening questions that demonstrate that you are taking an interest in getting to know them better, demonstrates that you are not just there to sell them. Nobody wants to feel like this person, here comes a salesperson, here comes the pitch, and then they may, although they might not demonstrate it outwardly, inwardly, they've got a lot of defense mechanisms going on. So again, key is be likable, be trustworthy, show an interest in them, and let them know you're there not just to sell them and leave it. If you can do that, you're putting people in a great frame of mind to engage with you during the consultation. Some basic questions you can ask, questions around how long they've lived in their home. If they have children, talk about their children. People love to talk about their kids and let them brag about that. How old they are, if they're in sports, if they're great students, wherever the customer wants to take that conversation about their children, let them go, let them brag. What they do for a living is a great topic. Again, people do have a lot of pride a lot of times in what they do for a living, and if you see that, let them talk about what they do for a living. If they have hobbies, that they like to talk about, certainly talk about that. Another great question to ask around is if they are referred, ask about the relationship with the referrer. I think what you're doing is you're just building in another layer of, hey, their friend, the relationship that they have with their referrer is advocating that we come and talk to you, that can't be a bad thing to talk about. Some other tips here, though, is to look for common interests. If you can find something that you have in common with the customer, you now have something you can both feel comfortable talking about and that you both know what to talk about. So that's really important. I think another thing is while you're building rapport, your job primarily is to listen carefully. Let them do the talking. People don't want you to come over so you can talk about yourself. They want to talk about themselves. So listen carefully, be genuine. Don't just do a kind of a mock building rapport where you're just checking the box, as I like to say, that you're actually being genuine and you're really thinking about, what their interests are. And topics to avoid at all costs. It doesn't really matter, but politics, religion, and weather. Okay? Just avoid those topics all the time. Here's the thing. You may have something in common politically or religiously with them, but there are going to be times when you don't. Those are deep-rooted emotions, and if you've misread that and you get into it, you could be creating a very uncomfortable environment for yourself. And to speak about weather means you just don't have anything else to talk about, so you went to the old default, and that's to talk about weather. So unless there's some major weather, like there's a huge snowstorm or a hurricane or something like that, which is really, really newsworthy, let's try avoid talking about weather at all costs. So those are definitely some tips. And here's some additional tips as well. Although you do a needs analysis on the third step of the sales process, which we're going to do tomorrow, ask non-threatening questions that both build a relationship, but also you can find a way to uncover needs and motivations for customers during the rapport building process. Make sure that the customer is comfortable before moving on to setting the agenda. There is a time when you're building a rapport that you will see the customer just kind of settle in and feel comfortable. And a lot of times people will give you that indication by saying, so, tell me about this solar. Or, tell me what you were going to do today. What are we doing? What's going on? I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. They use those types of phrases, which is basically saying, hey, I got it. I like you. I feel comfortable with you. I know why you're here. I'm now ready to hear what you have to say. And they're almost like giving you that indication that they're ready to move forward. When you get that indication from customers, that's a great sign. That means you've built rapport, they're comfortable, and now you're ready to move forward and set the agenda. But if you haven't got to that point, I think it's worth staying there and working with the customer a little bit more until you get to that point. There's no time frame on building a rapport. Typically, it will take 3 to 5 minutes, but I would say to you, if a rapport building needs to take 15 minutes, you just have a really social person, you've got to give them their 15 minutes. Like if you try to cut off a social person short, they might not outwardly display that, but hey man, you cut me short. I still want to get to know you. I just invited you into my home. On the flip side of that, you might have people that want the high D personality, a CEO type that just wants to get down to business. And they might be within 30 seconds saying, all right, man, let's go. Let's do this. Show me what you got. And you've got to be able to recognize that and adjust to people as well. But until you've got that indication that it's the biggest point is until you've got the indication that they're ready to move to the next step, stay on the step until you get there. Another point here is to identify and mirror their personality and tone. This is a really important trait, not to mimic people, but to kind of take their tone and identify their personality. Like if you have a person that's really dominant and that just wants to get down to business, you've got to get down to business with them. If you have a person who's very social and outgoing, you should raise the level of your outgoingness and enthusiasm to mirror that. If you have a person that's conservative, it might not make sense to be giving a motivational, speech to them. You want to kind of tone it down and speak on their tone and personality level and mirror their tone, their personality as best you can without mimicking people. I think that's really important that you take that on. The next point here is use info that you learn from the homeowner's lifestyle and connect the details to the benefits. It's important to look at, do they like to travel? Do they, they drive a Prius? Do they have, certain things that show you that they're environmentally focused, or if they're, they're money focused, or things like that while you're talking with them. Another point here is to observe what's inside and outside the home. Most people take pride in their home and love speaking about it. So if you see an opportunity where they have beautiful landscaping, or you see a bass boat, parked on the side of the house, or, inside the house you see, trophies or pictures that you could start to talk about, that's a great way to integrate that into the building rapport, because those are the things they love to talk about. If you can introduce the opportunity to introduce the referral program, I think it's a great opportunity to do that right from the get-go and building rapport. And then the last point on building rapport is just be sincere and genuine when connecting with the homeowner. People are more concerned about their needs than your agenda, and they can sense a lack of sincerity if you're just going through the motions. So it's just really important that you're a genuine person when doing that. So that's really the tips I had with building rapport. There's some basics there, but I think that they're all very important to establish the right environment to move forward. Once we've done that, we can now move to setting the agenda. And the action with setting an agenda is to inform the homeowner what will be covered during the consultation. Pardon my misspelling there. I'll correct that. The goal, obviously, is to set expectations of what we're going to do. It also is important that we identify the customer's goals, and also to conduct a soft close. We want to set the expectations of what we're going to cover, but also the expectation that at the end of it, we're going to ask you if you want to move forward. And I think that's important that we set that expectation right away. So why is it important to set an agenda at every consultation? Quite simply, it demonstrates that you're organized and that you respect the homeowner's time. People want to do business with people who are organized and people who are respectful of their time. Number two, it identifies the customer's goals and sticking points early so that they can be addressed. People want to know at the beginning that, hey, I got a bunch of questions that I'm thinking about here. If we can recognize those and address those and let the customer know that those are all great questions that we're going to address them, again, it puts the customer at ease. Includes the homeowner in the process. If the homeowner wants to cover something not mentioned in the agenda, you should add it to the list. Again, this is their agenda, not your agenda. That's the most important thing we can take from this. Sorry, guys. I hate when Google Calendar does that. Anyway, the next point here is it puts the customer at ease because they know what to expect. They might have a bunch of stuff that they want to cover with you and questions that they have. If we don't set the agenda and walk them through what we're going to cover, and they just don't have, they're going to start to interrupt you and want their questions answered all at once. Where if you set the agenda and say we're going to cover this, and this, and most likely their questions are going to fall into one of those steps, they'll be like, okay, the rep here, I recognize that they're going to cover that at this stage, so I'm just going to hold my question until then. What that really ultimately does is helps you maintain control and continuity in the presentation. There's nothing worse than losing control and losing control of the flow and the continuity of what you're trying to present to them. So setting the agenda does that as well. What it also does is it prepares the homeowner to think about making a decision by the end of the visit. I think it's really important that they have that expectation that if you like everything you hear, we're going to ask you if you want to move forward. Another thing that setting the agenda does, it gets the homeowner to begin saying yes by agreeing to the agenda. Getting people to close is really not one big yes at the end. It's an accumulation of a series of smaller yeses throughout the presentation that naturally lead to the yes at the end. So this is the first step in getting yeses. I already mentioned this next one allows you to maintain control of the presentation without appearing overly aggressive. But I also think what it does, too, is that it differentiates you from the competition. Most of our competition want to get right in there. They want to start pitching, like, right out of the gate and they're going to do it the way they want to do it. What this does is demonstrates that you're organized, you're respectful, and that you're going to make sure that by the end of it, all of their questions, concerns are going to be addressed, as well as what you need to cover with them. So the next step here is, what does a good agenda look like? Well, the first step in the good agenda is that you establish how long the consultation is going to take. There's a couple example phrases. Thanks so much for having me here today and for fitting me into your schedule. People want to be appreciated for giving their time. Today is going to take about 45 to 60 minutes. Does that still work for you? And when you ask that question, does that still work for you? It's a question, but it's also a question that has an assumptive tone. If you ask that question like, does that still work for you? Like, and there's a sense of uncertainty, you're giving a customer the opportunity to say, I really only got 30 minutes. But if you say it like almost like a rhetorical question, does that still work for you? Like you already know? Of course it does, because you're already committed to it. Like, and you assume that the answer is yes. You're going to get them to confirm that. The second piece of making what makes a good agenda look good is that you review all the steps of the consultation. So a couple of example questions are, I'd like to ask you some questions about your goals for going solar to make sure we are designing the best solution for your needs. Next, I can spend a few minutes going through how solar works if you feel that would be helpful. The next thing I'll cover is how you currently buy your electricity. You're going to find that really, really super interesting when I kind of break down your utility bill and what you pay for and how much you're paying and what the inflation rate is on that stuff. You're going to be pretty you're going to find that a pretty interesting conversation. So I'm building a little anticipation there. I'll then review with you what we feel the best solutions are based on your needs and goals that you talked to me about. And in order to make sure that I'm making the most of your time, what else would you want me to add to today's meeting? So we review what we're going to cover, and then the last thing we're going to do is, so this is what I'm going to cover. What else would you like me to add to this meeting? And one of the key tips here that I think is really important is that you should always personally bring a legal or a letter-sized pad of paper with you, and that should be off to the side. So when I ask that question, what else would you like me to add to today's meeting? I'm going to start to jot down the things that they want me to add. Whatever those things are, I'm jotting them down. So number one, I'm demonstrating to the customer, I'm listening to what their wants and needs are, and I'm writing them down, and I'm showing them that this is important enough for me to write down, and I'm going to make sure that we cover that for you. There's something that we do during the presentation that will be part of the next steps that kind of ties back their questions and what they want to cover back into it as well. And then the last thing I'm going to do before I move on to the next step is I'm going to do a trial close. So, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, after all of that, you'll probably be able to determine if solar makes sense for you. If everything looks good, we can discuss the next steps in talking about getting you into the installation queue. How does that sound? Or does that sound good? Again, assumptive that you're assuming the answer is going to be yes. And so when the customer agrees and says yes, yeah, that sounds good, they're basically confirming that, yes, if everything sounds good, I'll consider moving forward at that point. If the answer is no, then we may need to dig a little deeper to find out why. And it could be that they have, other things that are going on. They've got other estimates they're going to get or whatnot. We're going to save that part of the section. That's a long. We could cover a half hour just on that when we get to answering objections. But if the answer is no, we should try to dig a little deeper and find out what might prevent them from holding up. You want to know that, because there may be an opportunity for you to answer that during your presentation as well. And then some additional tips here. Understand what the customer wants to accomplish during the consultation. If you can do anything, you've uncovered the customer's motivation and why they're looking to consider solar, so you can set up a game plan to address those things and customize your solution specifically to their motivations. I've said this before to people. There's nothing worse, doing a ride along and watching a customer give a rep all of this evidence of what motivates them, and the rep completely misses it and then proposes a solution that's completely opposite of what the customer's motivations are. And that's a skill set. The skill set is to listen, and the other part of that skill set is to know your offer so you know which one fits the customer's needs. The second point here is be sure to address all of their questions by incorporating them into the presentation. You've got to uncover what their questions and concerns are, and then you got to knock them down. Answer them one at a time and make sure they all are. Because if you answer all of their questions or concerns, you're basically leaving the customer with nothing less to object to at that point. Third point is take notes and list their questions on a pad of paper. And then the point I was making earlier is as you address them and you answer them satisfactorily and you get confirmation from the customer that you've answered it to their satisfaction, you can then actually physically cross off the pad of paper. It's just like this visual that you can give a customer that is, yep, answer that, check. I've eliminated that question and concern for you. And then the last point here is you can look for opportunities to incorporate the referral program throughout the presentation. And by the way, as we get into each of these steps, you're going to see this be a recurring theme, that any opportunity you have in each of these steps to incorporate the referral program and introduce it is going to set us up for when we ask for them at the end of the presentation. So that is what I wanted to cover with you guys today. I do want to allow a couple minutes here to open up the floor here to any questions or comments. So if you have question you want to ask or comment, unmute and fire away. Anyone have any best practices on this? Market managers, I'm gonna call on you guys to get this rolling here. We can't just leave on dead silence.
Hey Jim, this is Michael Delaney. I got a question for you.
Okay.
I'm going in. I got an appointment tomorrow, and talking about setting the agenda. I already know that she's already told me over the phone that she's going to collect bids and estimates from other companies. What's the best way for me to approach that if I already know that going into the presentation?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a little bit of a different circumstance. You probably already, because the way you got the lead, probably already did a little agenda setting with them. I think the way I would handle it personally is if I was reviewing the agenda, I'd say, normally what I would do, Mrs. Jones, is, if after I've covered everything and answered people's questions and concerns, most people are in a position where they can make a decision. I know that you mentioned to me, that you're looking to get other bids. Is that still the case?
Okay.
And I would just take their temperature where they're at that point. And again, you haven't presented anything to them at that point, so it's kind of hard to, go right into answering objections because you haven't given them anything to think about yet. Okay. I think it's just worth inspecting one more time. But here's the thing I would say. Here's what I've learned in 30 years of selling at home. What people say to you before you present to them and how they feel after you present to them could be two completely different things. How many times have we gone shopping or I'm not going to buy anything today, and we end up buying something? Well, what happened in between there? We got influenced by something. Yeah. We got influenced by a sale. We got influenced because something or someone built value with us. And that's kind of all we're looking for. I can't tell you how many times I've gone, and I think I start the same philosophy every time I go buy a car. And thank God I don't do it a lot, but I'm like, yep, I'm going to go here, here, and here. I don't think in the last 3 cars I bought, I have got out of the first dealership without buying the car. I may think I'm going to do that, but I get in, I get the car, I drive it, I get excited. I know the deal, and if I get the deal, and I'm a pretty good negotiator, but if I get the deal I want, I'm like, why am I going to waste the rest of my afternoon shopping when everything I want is already here? And that's really what people are saying to you. It's like they're not giving you a answer because what they're really saying is you haven't built enough value yet. The great thing is you still have the opportunity to build all that value. Remember, guys, what our job is as salespeople is to influence people with logic, influence people with emotion. And whatever they say at the beginning doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same way at the end. So if they're saying that and they're still there, that's fine. Just keep in mind that they might change their mind after you're done presenting to them. And if they haven't, then at least you know what you have to work with at that point. So that was a great question, Michael. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hey, Jim, I think this is really great stuff. This is James up in Boston. I think if everyone really focuses on this rapport building and agenda setting, anyone that's ever had success in sales will be able to just tell you how much it affected their business going forward. And the best thing is it's something that you can put in to every presentation right away. Have a little note card of what your agenda is going to be so that you know what to follow while you're going through it. And then, make sure you take rapport building with you through the entire experience. And it'll just completely open up your world how much more you'll see a customer relax and make a shorter-term decision because they feel comfortable with you. So it's really awesome stuff. I hope everyone definitely takes it at much more than its face value because it's so important, and it's you'll be amazed at how successful it can be.
Mm-hmm. No doubt, James. That's a great point. It really does set the tone for the presentation. And if you set a positive tone and it's built with lots of positive anticipation for what you're gonna talk about and cover with them, it makes for a great consultation. And when you don't do it, you're kind of leaving yourself up to, some of them might go great and some of them might not go so great. So it's setting the tone is really, really important. All right, guys, that's all I had for you today. Have yourselves a great day, and tomorrow we're going to be going into talking about our needs analysis, which is a really, really important step in the sales process, is uncovering a customer's motivations and needs as well. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow morning.
All right. Thanks, Jim.